Hello, Mike. Happy Friday.
Hello, Jack. Happy Friday to you. And almost Halloween, so we
Hmm.
should do something scary AI stories. So last week, thank
Hmm.
you for putting up with this. You were reading one of my scary stories to give context, which I didn't do last week. This is part of this book, right? This book, Are We Too Stupid to Be Lazy, right? About how can
Hmm.
we like kind of change the way we educate ourselves and think about things and big cultural changes because of AI's awesomeness, right? But also its pluses and minuses. But anyway, the first part of it was kind of more setting the stage. The second part was the first thing I think people will do with the AI is cheat, right? So this was the cheating part, and it was four parts to say you'll cheat like just having that right now. I don't think of it as cheating, but my students are using AI. But now AI is so good that I kind of have to tell them, like, okay, it's too good. Like, I'm expecting you to kind of struggle with this, right? Because that's the moving your brain part is struggling with
Hmm.
things, right? Whereas I'm even having this trouble using AI to help me develop this new course, which I do need your help with.
Hmm.
But you know how AI is, it's just like too good. It's just like, okay, boom, here it is. Here's all the answers. And I'm thinking like this is kind of the new weird relationship because you then now have to be like, not is this true or false? It's more like, okay, what do I do with this? Do I just give it to somebody else? Like, here's that thing you asked for. Boom, right? Or, and that's weird because then you're like, well, what are you just gonna be a prompt person? Anyway, this is the whole problem with this. But then when I said it comes to cheating, like cheating is pretty, that's what we do, right? And I kind of was, my last piece was more focusing on this, on these big cheats, right? Where we invest tons and tons of money, but no one really kind of questions like, what is it this is supposed to benefit us again, right? Like I just met with Gretchen Whitmer. You know who this is? I was in this anyway. She's the governor of Michigan.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sounded familiar. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
so she's a she's a governor, right? So we talked
Hmm.
over like politics, I guess. It was a
Hmm.
political thing. Um, But apparently, her whole reason she won and the reason she is somewhat liked or whatever, she's like, hey, let's fix the roads, right? Like, that's what I mean. Like, here you go.
Hmm.
Like, roads, really unsexy, right? But everyone has to deal with roads. No one is going to be like, oh my God, here, everybody, give me some money so we can fix this road. People just don't get interested. But we're like, hey, fusion reactor. You see what I mean? Like suddenly then it's like, oh yeah, yeah, here's all the money in the world, and I'm like, yeah, but boy, think of the unsexy ways to make your life better, right? And once those are all good,
Hmm.
but the stories people tell are so convincing, it's you've seen the Vegas. Everyone loves to make fun of Musk, but he's got like a tunnel that can have one car in it, basically. And it was
Hmm.
like, we've invented tunnels that move millions of people a day. Like it's not something we've never done before, right? So having a tunnel to move like five people seems silly. Great. I don't know how you sold it, but you see what I mean. Like this wasn't mind-bogglingly innovative, right? But it paid a lot of people, people got money, right? And that's kind of why I call it cheating or grifting or whatever.
Yeah,
Now,
I just wanted to defend Elon, on that,
please
right? So,
defend Elon.
yeah,
He needs
yeah.
it,
So,
man. He's only a trillionaire, I think, right?
yeah, he is a poor guy. And he needs my help. But for the Vegas tunnel, I think that the idea was to automate tunneling, right? Because people, yeah, indeed, you're right. Under the English channel, they did spectacular work there, and they are the Swiss, I think, or the Europeans general are tunneling under the Alps, and that's very very impressive work. But the idea is that you have a machine, and the machine is just kind of going, and you don't have all those manual processes that are very dangerous and kind of very labor intense, so that the machine needs years to kind of move a mile or something like that, right? So just kind of like to help a little bit for Elon, right? His idea is, okay, so let's have a machine and it's gonna go like 100 meters a day, but it's going to do it by itself. It's fully automated process. It's going to create the walls around the tunnel, when it's kind of going to be safe, and it's going to be the hardest part probably is to be able to deal with various geological conditions, right? Because sometimes you're going to have a really hard rock. Sometimes you're going to run into something really wet. Sometimes you're going to run into something that is going to be maybe like a natural gas, kind of like layers are very dangerous, right? So tunneling is a very tricky business, and I think, yeah, I think the boring machine, right, or the boring company it has, is probably one of actually more, I would say it's maybe a little bit more interesting than Tesla, in terms of the technology. But, I just okay. So
No,
Elon now you,
I like your
yeah,
perspective. I
yeah.
as things go, I do know for certain the whole point of this was so he could have a private road in LA, because I know somebody who knows him,
Oh,
and
okay.
all he does is complain about LA traffic. And
Mm.
by the way, governmentally, I think I'll throw on a fascinating sidebar, if you want a fascinating sidebar, which is the city of Chicago, who we all know and love, right?
Mm.
Was basically for most of its, and still is, owned by the railroad. So the problem is the railroad actually owns most of Chicago, right? Like in
Oh,
its
really?
huge rail
Mm.
lines. Yeah, these rail lines
Mm.
take up a lot of room, right? And we're lucky, of course, to have the wonderful elevated line, because that's something we can see and use, right? But most of this
Mm.
traffic of it's why we're Chicago, right? We brought goods and services in. We were the center of a hub of the railroads, bringing things in and out. Now, here's the fun part. You ready for it?
Mm.
This railroad land is useless, right? It's got trains on it, but the air rights. This is the thing. The uh, um, railroad does not own the air above these rail lines. So guess
Mm.
what? They did. Daniel Root, I think, pretty did. Burnham or Root or whatever said, here's this building. It was right next to the Opera House. Anyway, I don't know the name of the building, but it's still there. It faces the anyway. So they're like, well, we'll just build a building above the rail line, right? And they did, and that in fact spread to everything, including Millennium Park, was above rail lines, right? It was just kind of unused land. It's like, well, we can build above it, and we own this land. So I'm gonna throw it to the ground underneath things for the most part is also free. Right? So
Mm.
what I mean is this eminent domain of like how much does it cost to create a bridge or something, like maybe like you said, that's more labor intensive, might not be the labor, right? It's really the rights of how are you disturbing and or devaluing the property above you. Like I don't know if the actual job of mining or boring is like I'm sure it's doable, right? Like by the way, another fun fact, there used to be 700,000 coal miners in Virginia. That was a big job at one point, and now there's like 70,000 coal miners. So you know what I mean? Like the shifting of technology versus effort and jobs. Is that our topic for today? I think we're both out of our wheelhouse, are we? But anyway, I thought the whole air rights thing was fun, right? Because a lot of it has to do with money. That's all, right? Like when you're doing something here or here, who owns it, right? And especially if you're dealing with very expensive real estate, which I'm assuming, is a thing.
Well, we can very easily segue from this discussion to AI, right? Because we can say,
Good.
hey, because it was like, several decades ago that we were promised flying cars. So yeah, I want one, right? I mean,
I think we can have flying
yeah.
cars. I think they just crash and kill everybody quite a bit. I think that's the negative.
Yeah, so the
But you've
Jetsons,
got a good point, which is I
yeah.
think ownership of AI, isn't that still debatable? Like you're using RAG right now, right? And here maybe we can transition because I do need some help
Mm.
because I'm trying to teach it. And when you teach it, you should know it. And I'm curious if I know enough to teach something. It seems impossible, right? That I would have anything to teach. So I figured it's a master's level, so we'll just call it grad students, right? Like, hey, I have a whim. Why don't you guys work on this? I'm going to do it that way, right? That's a good old-fashioned grad student thing. Um, Speaking of which, do you mind one more completely insane tangent? So
Yeah.
there's a economic historian at Northwestern who just won the Nobel Prize for economics. So good for him, right? And he's like, I had no concept that I would ever win because economics never cares about history. And I start to think of that when I get into for anyone still listening to this, which they've probably all tuned out by now, but I'm really into Markov, right? So Markov is this really fascinating idea about, do you have to know everything that came before the last state in order to create the next state? And Markov, in a way, is like, no, the last state actually conveys the memory of everything that came before it. This is my mind, right? Like, you don't need to know every step that got you there, but it itself encapsulates all the steps. And so therefore, the next step is not free will, meaning anything could happen. It's sort of, the ball bouncing off the pachinko machine, right? Like everything happens.
It's even worse than that. It's something that is basically a conditional probability, right? So the future, the prediction of the future, the tarot cards, or of AI, are based on something as mundane as a conditional probability. And that
As
is,
it should be, because so is everything, right? Like I always think it's like a 2 out of 3 thing, right? Like if you can get 2 out of 3 right, you're gonna win most of the time, right? And that's the best you could ever do. If it's 50-50, this is the Monty Hall problem. Do you like the Monty Hall problem?
No, not my cup of tea. No, I'm not very familiar with that.
Well,
Monty
let me just
Python? Monty Python, maybe.
Monty Python problems are all solvable by just arguing about it, right? No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's anyway. The Monty Hall problem is this. It's a fun math problem. Monty Hall used to have a show where he would give away something and he'd say, here, behind door number 1, 2, 3, pick a door. And so people with 3 choices would pick a door and they'd say, okay, door number 3. So Monty Hall would always say, well, if you had chosen door number 1, you would have gotten this pile of garbage, right? So that was always the trick. And he would always ask, do you want to change your mind? And this is the Monty Hall problem. And the Monty Hall problem says, always change your mind. And it's the same 2 out of 3 thing because they say, well, now that 1 is revealed, it isn't 50-50, right? The odds have subtly changed. And is this Markov in a nutshell, right? Like it's sort of that you think everything is random, but now it really isn't because something has been removed and revealed, right? Because they know that this wasn't the right choice, right? And they know one of the other 2 is also not the right choice and 1 is. The point is you didn't have that knowledge going in. Should you update your model? No, this isn't getting anywhere. It seems like one of those fun math things. It's like no,
I would
not
have
so
to think
fun.
about. I would have to think a little bit about that, but in relation to the Markov chains. But yeah, maybe there's something to it. But yeah.
I'm going to try to write something up. So if you can think of anything that gives me some context to be helpful, because I like this changing your mind thing, right? Like we all often get some information, settle on a decision somehow, right? Because that's usually emotional, this decision. But then we learn something new and then we're back to Bayes, right? So we learn something new, but we do not want to change our mind, right? Because we feel like, no, nothing's really changed enough. And whatever I thought at that time is probably correct. You see what I mean? But actually, no, it's changed, but sometimes we just don't want to go through the, okay, I have to reassess this now. And I think this is what happens at different points in all sorts of different decision making. And so the point of my class is that, right now we really love numbers, right? We're going to say, hey, market was up yesterday, it's going to be up tomorrow. See what I mean? Like everyone loves this narrative, except that isn't ever true, but we kind of like it, right? Like, oh, it's too late. You shouldn't invest now. It's these kind of things where numbers or winning was part of my last, remember this idea, hey, we're going to win AGI. And I was like, cool, but wait, we have some test that knows what the smartest thing acts like. And I'm like, once you know what the smartest thing acts like, then it's just, it isn't the smartest thing, right? Like it can't have, can it have measure? As I said, I'm not sure. Do you even know what like right now, the tests for processors, remember, they're like, hey, how fast can you make this dot appear here and then appear there? Remember those things when we used to
Mhm.
benchmark all the time and be like, oh my God, the new computer is twice as fast at putting this dot over here and over here. And you would buy this new computer and you would find, of course, that, well, nothing much has changed because, you're too, so maybe you'd get another percentage frame rate, but honestly, this has to do with optimizations and things that aren't even up to the computer, right? They're bad programming, or how many dumb loops do we put in our programs? And my
Mhm.
assumption now is, with the amazing work that these models do in coding, so we've revolutionized coding, I think, right? It must be completely out of the bag now that coding is different than it was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah, very
Okay.
much so. Yeah.
Well, that I think is absolutely worth celebrating in a way, because the reason why we're both in this is I want to make computers easier to use, right? That's my whole thing. Now computers are easier to use for people who are really good at computing.
Mhm.
Now, can that transfer out to people who aren't good at computing, is kind of where my head's at. And I think people are still probably using GPT as a search appliance, which is
Mhm.
fine, except
Yeah.
monetarily it's kind of sucky, right? Like, hey, I put my article out there and instead it just scrapes it and gives the answers like, 42 or whatever. It's like, oh, wait, you're supposed to read the whole book. It doesn't make any sense if you don't read the whole book, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Hitchhiker's Guide reference there, but you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, so those benchmarks, there's benchmarks for everything. So perhaps the AGI problem has already been solved because, oh, you have a benchmark for programming, you have benchmarks for, ma problem solving, math, the legal stuff, all the domains that you can think of. There is probably a benchmark that the AI is like at 90% or 95 or 100%. So perhaps that already has been solved, but perhaps the race is now to the AGI or a whatever super, intelligence, right? So that would be something for which, by definition, the benchmark does not exist, cannot exist, right? Because the benchmark would be something beyond human kind of capacity, right? So yeah, yeah. So okay, so now okay, so Einstein, relativity, right? So give me something, like that, right? So the question will be a benchmark question. Give me something better than Einstein, right? Relativity theory or something, or give me something better than string theory, right? Or or whatever. So maybe that will be the next step. I think that might be the race, and then the answer will come, and we may not be able to verify the answer unless there is some sort of an experiment, right? So perhaps the hope is that some guys with AI in the warehouse will come up with something new, and that's going to be maybe the fusion reactor, right? Because they're gonna come up with a kind of like a recipe, right? Like you have 2 teaspoons of sugar, a couple of teaspoons of deuterium, and you mix it the right way, and then there you go, you have a self-sustaining fusion, right? uh, so that would be an example of an super intelligence, right? That's something that we couldn't do, but okay, well, you didn't know that you need to teaspoons of sugar, but the AI figured it out for you, right? So yeah, so that's kind of I think where things are going. So it's pretty exciting, but also pretty scary because it may not all be. It's everything is going to be dual use, right? So the super intelligence is obviously dual use. There could be good things, there could be things that we think are good that will be not so good, and there is obviously the bad things, right? So there's gonna be false positives from false negatives, negative positives, and negative negatives, right? That's what I think.
Right, the known knowns, the unknown unknowns, or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you've got it right. It's and or you may not know, but I've spent the past year coming up with my universal theory because at least I have GPT to go back and forth with, right? Like if I had a PhD level or Wheeler, or I don't know, I mean, some of these big physics people to talk to for infinite amounts of time so that I could learn something and both explore different hypotheses of mine, right? What's fun about using GPT as this partner is now that I've completely trained it in this, it knows now my shorthand of what all this stuff means to me. My difficulty is probably a little bit like, not necessarily, I don't want to compare myself to Einstein, but to think of it as like Einstein was trying to create a model to understand something that was not a problem, which is gravity, right? So Newton's like, here's gravity, here's how everything works. Shut up and build all the buildings you want because this is going to work. And Einstein just didn't like that, right? And is like, well, that doesn't seem reasonable that there's some force that we don't know how it works, right? And it somehow exists, and that light does that. Anyway, he sort of battled these things that you can just take for granted because a model is a model, right? It's like a little model of something. You can play with it, and as long as it doesn't break, you know what I mean? Like, here's my model of whatever. It's useful. And I think that's where our problem with getting better as AI is like, how much more useful can it get, right? I mean, it's really pretty good when you think going from 3 to 5 or wherever, right? Or even including deep sync. My curiosity is one thing AI models probably don't know, which is how to conserve energy, which is the biggest problem too, right, for humans, because we don't like to use energy, I don't think. Well, we do. We love using energy, but there are problems with energy, right? Like it's not infinite. And we've also learned that when we expect infinite energy, I don't know if I mentioned this, but one fun thing about Portugal is they don't have clothes dryers, right? All the clothes are hung out on the line, right? Because why? Well, it's too much energy. They don't have the energy to run millions of dryers. Just like in Japan, they don't have the ability to heat houses. They don't have enough energy to make everybody's house nice and 75, 78 degrees at night. You know what I mean? And so when I live there, I'm like, oh, this sucks. And being humans, we'd get used to it. You see but this is the point, right? Like we're coming from a cultural, I think AI seems very American to me. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm with the Portuguese on the clothing front. I kind of
It's
like
good.
I like the shirt to actually be dried, by hanging, on the line,
Sure,
and then,
I agree.
so yeah, so
It doesn't
but
work when it rains. That's my biggest
and with the
thing. So
Japanese, maybe they are spending too much energy on those bullet trains, I mean, maybe,
that's true.
they are running out
There
of,
you go.
it's going so fast, it probably eats a lot of energy. But seriously, right? I think, yeah, there is, uh, we don't know how exactly they are training the AIs, how much of the information is English speaking, kind of input, how much is whatever, Mandarin, Chinese, right, in language, how much is, Japanese philosophy, right, that stuff. So yeah, I think that there might be some biases that we take for granted out there, uh, but kind of maybe tangentially to that discussion,
Hmm.
is, the memory problem is probably one of the primary considerations for AI systems today. How do you represent whatever you need, right? How is that supposed to be? Whether it's supposed to be RAG, to your point, in your class, which is essentially, important to realize that RAG is separate from LLM in a way, um, because it's a search system. right? So it's probably the best search system that we have. The connection to generative AI is obviously you can use output from RAG and put it into an LLM, but the connection here is that your indexing process, right? Your conversion of whatever information you want to represent as embeddings in vector store in that, because RAG is basically a collection of vectors. That process is also generative in nature. So you have a very elaborate algorithm that basically a neural network takes the information that is incoming and converts it into those vectors. Those vectors are called embeddings. And the power, the reason for doing that is that the search is extremely effective because you are kind of compressing information into vectors, and that way it's a lot better than keyword search, right? Because the keyword might be missing from a document, but the fact that the AI is kind of doing the conversion into vectors, it will kind of retain some of the kind of like neighboring information into that and kind of embed it into the embedding, pun intended, right? And then it's a much more the search is able to retrieve somewhat unrelated information. For sure, information that is not sharing the keywords, but it's semantically related, right? So then in the RAG process, now you have those embeddings, now you are able to use them. So now that's what's called RAG, right? Like you want to say something you ask a question to, and the LLM is going to answer it, but as context to that question, RAG can automatically feed whatever the institutional data might be, or whatever your private research, collection might include, and then so you have your question that you are asking to the AI, but then you're appending perhaps pages and pages of stuff that was relevant to your question because the embedding also searched the collection of those embeddings with respect to what your intention was, or what your statement was. So yeah, so that is the process here seems to be quite kind of foundational nowadays with generative AI, and probably is here to stay because of that powerful search, not because of anything else. Because you can, sure, yeah, you can attach whatever you want to your communications with the AI, right? You can do that. You can do it manually, right? So you have a question, hey, I want something better than Einstein, and then you attach the book that is, the theory of relativity, and it goes in there. Okay, great, right? The AI is going to munch on this, right? But if you don't want to do it manually, then the AI might be able to search for whatever might be relevant.
Well, and I think that maybe that use case is what's a little, certainly not what I was doing when I'm exploring this physics thing, right? Like I'm not looking for a search engine. What I'm looking for is, does this concept map to our understanding of XYZ, right? Like, so it's this thing of like, and you have to learn physics. Anyway, I don't want to go into it in too much depth, but I think of this sort of, maybe it just goes back to Monty Hall. Like, I feel like I'm just trying to get 2/3 there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to answer a question, which is kind of a typical use case. Hey, I need to know how many cups of sugar to put into my coffee, or something like that, right? And so you have that as I think, pretty big piece of the pie. And when I did the study that Microsoft did about how do people, you've seen this before, by the way, right? You use Microsoft products. You see at the top where it's like, ask me anything. This is the new kind of why I just despise Microsoft so much, because I'm like, okay, so I'm here working in Word, which is already hell, pretty much, because it's just so elaborate, right? Like Word just couldn't be more elaborate for as little as it does, in my opinion. But fine, it's legacy, whatever, you know what I mean? This is most people ignore it because they've been around it so long, and that's not good, right? Because that's why I use Medium. Medium has like 4 buttons to do everything. Anyway, this is just me. But it says ask me anything, and so they were able to do that institutionally, and then they went in and they kind of like mined what people were looking for. And that's the point of my class. What do you know, when I used to do search appliances, I would say capture everything everyone types, right? This is your like gold. What are people looking for? What is their mental model of what you have to offer? Because then you can easily start to see that most people's concepts are not met. Because you've done this before. Have you searched in a site before, like a context search within a site, and you get the most worthless stuff ever, which is always the case, right? Like, and the thing is, being human, I'm like, we don't know that the thing we want can be in there. We just don't know how to tell it to find it, right? As to your point about keywording, if you don't have insanely good taxonomies for everything, which is the topic this week in my class, by the way, taxonomies, right? Like if you don't have amazing taxonomies, and then all the people in your organization know and use the taxonomy, like you're a airline pilot, you probably know what the dial below the thing is called. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my GPLQ is registering 2.5, right? Like, great. I hope you all understand what that means, because I don't. You know where I'm at, like, and that's what happens. People come into areas. So when they looked at all what people were searching for, they were searching for exercise tips, diet tips, right? Like, it's kind of these interesting subsets, and they were huge compared to what people would normally search for, right? Which is business related, I assume. Like, what does a GPL3 dial do? Like, or someone is telling me that the deadline for, you must deal with all this time, like the deadline for form 35-7 is coming up, Jack. You better get that thing filled in and submitted.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense at all? Probably not.
Well, yeah, I mean, very often when I kind of use AI for something, especially if this is maybe exploratory work, I'm asking the AI to do exactly what you are saying, right? So give me the taxonomy, give me structured explanation of what you are saying, right? So if I have an acronym, right, that stands for something, I need to know what it is, right? And I need to know what the connections might be, and the AI by itself may not be willing to do that, because it's just a probabilistic soup that it's kind of fishing
It
from.
probably is going to be 2/3 of the way right. How's that? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what I think we need to get
yeah.
used to, right? Like, it's good enough, better than guessing. But sorry, yeah, I just remember the first thing of being in discussions with Delta Airlines over building something for Delta Airlines was the soup of acronyms. It's just the worst. And then when I went into banking, even more so. And technology, sorry, we're the worst, right? Everything is in an acronym, right? Every system, every layer of computer itself, plus the thing it runs, is all wrapped in some acronym. And, it's job security. I think it's great, right? Like but naming things and getting things to work properly, often then, as we've pointed out, like it gets old quick, right? Because then you're just brittle. And I think that's the problem where we go back to coding with AI now. It's like, hey, people are probably, almost all code bases are brittle, right? They're not well architected, hard to deal with, never were built for kind of probably the robustness. Makes you wonder actually how they build ChatGPT, because boy, it's pretty fast. And I know it must use tons and tons of energy, right? Because these GPUs are not efficient. They're just good, but they burn calories. Apparently, the new Apple computers, that's their kind of claim to fame now, is these real low powered GPU units. I don't want to get into hardware, but it's the energy expenditure part that's interesting. I don't know that NVIDIA even talks about that, like that. Yeah, we make these things, but boy, they take 1,000 watts, per second to run. That's a lot of energy. I don't know. A lot of people complain
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, there's talks about building gigawatts of power just next to those supercomputing centers, and those are just enormous. And yeah, you would think that maybe that's not that great. I don't know, or are we going into that dark world of the Matrix, or the Blade Runner, where there's always rain and there's always darkness, maybe because all the all the the whole planet is polluted by those enormously powerful, whatever, electrical grids and whatever. So yeah, that is something. But I think, to your point, maybe about the ontologies and acronyms and all that stuff, perhaps there is also a linguistic component to it, right? I mean, we are all maybe a little bit, we have a predilection for saying GPS rather than global positioning system. And maybe the same is happening in the programming world. We have we kind of tend to abbreviate. We definitely don't write code descriptions at the level they should be, and the code documentation. We just kind of pushing everything out of the door as quickly as possible. So there might be a human component to that maybe AI can help with. When I'm writing code with the AI, I'm so happy that the AI can write the code description and the code documentation for me, because yeah, it would double or triple my time probably of kind of building stuff.
Oh, and truly, I think that I want to build on top of that, right? Because now then you have qualitative narratives on top of what can be, again, pretty obtuse, right? Like, here's a thing that looks for the number 2 and then says hello world, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Because the inner workings are what's fascinating to me, is that there's probably languages with a lot more abstraction now than they used to have, right? But when we came up in the day of machine code and C++, right? It's pretty dirty, right, into the weeds in a way as to what it does, and it requires a lot more verbosity, or a lot more uh it's not, whatever, what's the opposite of abstraction? Again, it's like more
Definition.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's why people like it. It's like having that sort of superpower of being able to do a ton of work with very few but well chosen. It's the command line people, right? Remember the good old command line people? They used to love it, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there
I'm
you
I'm
go,
still
yeah.
still there, still there. The best interface ever.
Well, there exactly, because you can be extremely precise and you don't have to abstract it out to clicking and whatevering, right? Like, you don't have to find them. If only Microsoft Word was um what's it, gzip, or what's the name of that damn, what's that thing called, the famous word processor? Anyway, whatever. um Emacs, I don't know, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like, these are the real word processors where everything you have to kind of keep in your mental model as
yeah, yeah. VI,
um
right? VI is the religion, right? Still,
VI, there
still,
you go.
still,
So
still.
whatever, come on,
Yeah,
help me out here. We all know
yeah.
the God, how people just couldn't write anything without oh God, is VI the one with the scientific notation? Oh, oh, by the way, I when I published all my work as scientific papers, I had to get it to use oh God, what's that horrible language that I hate? So I had to translate all of my stuff into LaTeX.
Oh,
So thankfully, the 2 out of 3-ness of GPT could format LaTeX for me and do all my scientific formulas. So I'm sort of like, I was very grateful of not having to learn how to do scientific notation in LaTeX,
yeah.
because
It's probably it would be harder than the research that you do.
exactly it, and perhaps that's our biggest theme. Is it worthwhile to free up people's mental model from the difficulties of using computers precisely, and make this middle thing that can do the precise stuff for you, I guess? And can we, or can I train people to say, okay, is and I will actually, you'll like this one. So I don't know the how good this person is, but it's in the JEE, whatever that is, the Journal of something or other. Using generative AI for large-scale qualitative analysis of social media posts to understand why people leave computer science. So literally, this was going to be one of my activities. I'm like, go to any Reddit post and see if you can understand generally a general sentiment of what's going on. So do you think I'm vindicated now that someone's actually published the very same idea? Because I thought, well, that's pretty new, right? And then I think you deal with interesting things like what day did you check and how, how topical is this? Do people's mind change over time? Then you get Bayesian stuff going on. I don't know. I always find like it's great to have an approach, an outcome, and then you can be like, great, solved, right? Like, hey, we filed that form in time for this quarter. People have that now, right? Especially public companies have this thing. Every quarter, you've got to give us some results, and every single company can barely function to get that out on time. And they only do it for this one purpose. So it's not for anybody to learn anything. It's just to get this thing done. So I've always found that counterintuitive because you should be every day understanding how well your company's doing, sort of, right? Like, and you might have your boring initiative out there boring away. Okay, we should check up. How's that boring thing going? Like, that's supposed to be done by now. We should have daily updates on how the boring is happening. Or you see what I mean? Like, everything is very tied to a outcome, which is usually tied to a date and time. Whereas reality is not like that. You see, it's a continuous thing where we adjust constantly and say, oh, wow, the boring machine took a left. What the hell, man? Get that thing back on track. It's supposed to go this way. You see what I mean? Like, that's humans, like, hey, the garbage is piling up. We need to take the garbage out. Or whatever we perceive as things that we need to act on. Anyway, so my point is, AI being sort of a bridge, but a 2 out of 3 bridge is better than we've ever had before, I guess, right? And if we were Googling something and then having to go to a website and then kind of parse through the website and, this sort of thing, was that better now than it just saying, yeah, the answer is 42? Like, do we miss out? Because I am starting to read the novel Frankenstein, and I'm a little surprised because I'm like, yeah, there's a monster and it walks around and it's got bolts in its neck. And it's like, no, the book isn't like that at all. It's about this other thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm interested now because I'm like, oh, I never really read this book before, right? I just know kind of in my mind, bolts, electricity. And I think that's very common amongst everyone, right? Like we don't specialize in deep knowledge. We have general knowledge and we might focus in an area. But with AI now, we have this opportunity to broaden our perspective, which I think is the best ever, honestly. Best since the internet, really, because the internet kind of sucks, right? Kind of lame. It's okay, but it's had its day. I'm kidding, but what do you think?
Well, I think that there is a lot of maybe there will be a lot to be said about the front end, right? Like if let's say AI is getting to 80, 90%, or maybe kind of even better than 100%, right? Maybe it's maybe there's this benchmark and it comes up with an answer that's above 100%, right? I mean, maybe kind of came up with something new or whatever, right? An association that nobody ever found, right? And in those corporate environments, it will solve all the boring problems and all the important problems, and then it's gonna display on screen. Oh yeah, okay, so it's 42, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, here's your answer, right? but if let's say that AI is kind of has some sort of an embodiment, that is, maybe somebody wearing a three-piece suit, and gray hair, and smoking a pipe. And now, it will already, AI can very well communicate. And you've been talking about,
Yeah.
how impressed you were with the voiceovers, right, that the AI can generate. Right. So if there is some sort of an avatar that is maybe a robot that's going to walk into a meeting and it will solve your boring problem, it's going to explain it to you, with some sort of a frame that is authoritative and believable and something that you can identify with. Maybe that's going to give another kind of boost to our understanding and our willingness to accept the results, right? And then maybe that's going to be like in 2001 Space Odyssey, right? I mean, that voice, right, made the movie, right? If the voice was anything different, maybe something automatic like in Star Trek, right? The computer or always is kind of like very mechanistic, right? I'm not talking about Commander Data, right? But the voice, of the AI of the starship, if that voice was in 2001, kind of like talking to, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that, right? That kind of thing, it would kill the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's kind of like maybe there is something to it, right? Like maybe how do you embody the AI, right? Now, I mean, maybe we are already there, we just don't see it because there's just command line and it's appealing only to a few guys like you and I, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so maybe we are at that stage now.
I think that's a really good perspective, right? Because how can we exist outside of our own mental model, right? We have a mental model of this stuff. And I will give you an update. Actually, maybe it's interesting to your point is that I use multimodal things with at least ChatGPT. So I'm in there typing when I want to do things that have, I want kind of more verbose output, right? So I'm looking for more meat, and I tend to be very terse because I think I can put my thing together with some few words. Anyway, whatever. So words are being bandied back and forth, not like a conversation. What is interesting about the new voice changes that they make is the voice used to actually be Scarlett Johansson. That was the voice, they kind of faked this sort of very like you said, some sort of personality, right? And now as they've gone into it, you can choose voices, but I've noticed they've really doubled down on the personality. And the personality weirdly also gets very, yeah, that's really great. You should be thinking about things like that. And those are fun things to think about. And you should do that. And see what I mean? Like it almost is trying to be more conversational, which annoys the ever-loving hell out of me because like no, I want it to be Hal, right? I want it to be the authoritative pipe smoking person that says, no, your concepts are a little bit too fuzzy. You really should look, whatever, like a teacher. And so I'm trying to be a teacher by pushing people into uncomfortable positions so that they actually move out of their comfort zone and learn something, right? Because in our zones, we will sit, right? I think we just don't do anything, right? So we always have to be moved by their trash piling up. Oh, wow, I guess I do need to finally take out the trash. Oh, the water's leaking on the ground. Oh, I guess I do need to deal with plumbing. You see what I mean? We're often motivated by things that are not in our control to do things. But the comfort out of our comfort zone is the learning. Ooh, how should I deal with this problem, right? Should I talk to someone or learn something? That's why the people are always asking about their exercise, right? Like, should I be doing weights and then eating? You know what I'm like, they don't know. And they want to get this more elaborate advice. And so anyway, I'm just interested in, and maybe that's a topic for the next time, which is, can AI, should it have a personality? Should it have a point of view? Should it be a character? And on that, I do have to stop because not only are we out of time, but I got to run to the bathroom. So thanks, Jack.
All
Cheers.
right. Okay.
Talk soon.